Have you ever made a decision you instantly regretted? You're not alone. Our minds are full of invisible traps. But what if I told you there's a way to see them clearly and avoid them forever? In this video, we've taken all 99 mind-blowing ideas from the international bestseller, The Art of Thinking Clearly, and transformed them into 10 unforgettable characters, each one revealing the hidden flaws in how you think, decide, and live. Don't skip a second. Every part connects deeply with your everyday life. This isn't just a summary. This is a mental mirror, a complete clarity check. And trust me, no one breaks it down like this. Watch till the end, it'll change how you think, permanently. Chapter 1, The Impulsive Reactor. We live in a world that moves fast, too fast. And in this chaos, our mind becomes a reactor, not a thinker. We jump, we choose, we say yes, we panic, and most of the time, we regret. This is the world of the impulsive reactor, the part of you that acts before it understands. You feel the pressure, the emotion, the tension, and boom, decision made. Not because it's the best choice, but because it felt urgent. That's the action bias. The illusion that doing something is better than doing nothing. But here's the truth. Not all motion means progress. Sometimes waiting is wisdom. Then comes the affect heuristic. Ever bought something just because it felt good in the moment? Or trusted someone just because they smiled? That's not logic, that's emotion wearing a mask. This mental shortcut uses your feelings to judge reality, blinding you to facts, risks, and consequences. Now mix that with the overconfidence effect. Your mind telling you, you know enough, you got this. But the danger lies not in what you know, it's in what you think you know. Overconfidence leads to rushed decisions, failed plans, and broken trust. All because your inner voice spoke louder than reality. And if you've ever made a decision while angry, heartbroken, scared, or excited, you've met emotional reasoning. That's when your feelings scream, this is the truth. But emotions are not facts, they're chemical storms. Trusting them as logic is like navigating a storm with a broken compass. Now pause. Ask yourself, how many choices have I made because it felt urgent, emotional, or just easy? We don't think to reflect. We don't stop to breathe. But that's what separates the thinkers from the reactors. If you want to master your mind, you must learn this. Not every feeling deserves a reaction. Not every urge deserves a decision. The impulsive reactor inside you is strong, but it can be tamed, and once it is, clarity becomes your superpower. Keep watching, because in the next chapter we'll meet an even more dangerous enemy, the one who thinks they're always right. Chapter 2, The Overconfident Expert. Confidence is powerful. It builds leaders, inspires action, creates momentum. But unchecked confidence? That becomes ego, and ego can be deadly. Meet the overconfident expert, that voice in your head that says, I already know this. I don't need help. I've got everything under control. But often, the more certain we are, the more blind we become. This illusion starts with what psychologists call the illusion of control. You believe you're steering the ship, that outcomes depend on your actions. You think, if I work harder, if I plan smarter, everything will go my way. But life isn't a machine you control. It's a storm you navigate. And believing you can control every variable, that's a setup for frustration, not success. Then there's the self-serving bias. When things go right, you take the credit. When they go wrong, you blame luck, people, timing. Your ego builds a shield to protect your image. But the truth? Growth only happens when you face your flaws, not just your wins. Now enters the Dunning-Kruger effect, a deadly trap where the least knowledgeable people believe they're experts. The less they know, the more they believe they know everything. That's why beginners often seem overconfident, while true masters stay humble. Because real intelligence isn't loud. It listens, learns, doubts itself. The more you know, the more you realize how much you don't. And finally, the halo effect. You meet someone charming, smart, or successful in one area, and suddenly you believe they're great at everything. But brilliance in one field doesn't equal brilliance in all. We apply a golden glow to people or ourselves and ignore the shadows behind it. That's how false experts rise and how real experts fall. So ask yourself, how many times has ego tricked you? How often have you chosen pride over progress? The overconfident expert doesn't want truth. It wants applause. But truth doesn't live in ego. It lives in humility. The smartest people are not the ones with the loudest answers. They're the ones still asking better questions. Stay with me, Because next we meet a character who doesn't think, they follow, blindly, silently, and sometimes, tragically. Chapter 3, The Fearful Investor. Money. Just hearing that word triggers something inside us. Fear, greed, hope, pressure. We chase it, we protect it, but often we let it control us. Welcome to the world of the fearful investor, the part of you that makes money decisions, not with logic, but with fear. And the most powerful fear of all? Loss. This is loss aversion, a bias so strong that losing 100 feels twice as painful as gaining 100 feels good. It's why people hold on to failing investments, why they won't sell a sinking stock, why they stay in bad jobs, bad deals, even bad relationships, just to avoid loss. The fear of losing is greater than the joy of winning. Think about it. Have you ever refused to take a risk? Not because it wasn't smart, but because you were scared to lose something? That's loss aversion at work. It whispers, play it safe, don't let go. What if it gets worse? But here's the irony. Playing it safe is often the riskiest move. Holding on to a mistake doesn't make it a success, it just makes it last longer. Smart investors, smart people know when to walk away. They don't cling to the past, they make decisions based on what is, not what was. The fearful investor is not just about money. It shows up in your dreams, your career, your life choices. It tells you to avoid risk, avoid discomfort, avoid pain. But if you avoid all risk, you avoid all growth. Now imagine a life where you're not driven by fear, where loss doesn't paralyze you, where you make bold, smart, conscious choices. That life begins the moment you stop fearing failure more than you desire success. So next time you feel yourself hesitating, ask, am I making this choice from fear or from power? Keep watching, because next, we meet a character who doesn't just make poor choices, they copy everyone else's. Chapter 4, The Herd Follower. We like to believe we're original thinkers, that our choices are ours, our opinions, our beliefs, our path. But more often than not, we're just following the crowd. Enter the herd follower, the silent part of your brain that watches others and copies them. Not because it's right, but because it feels safe. Because if everyone's doing it, it must be okay, right? This is the trap of social proof. You walk past two restaurants, one empty, one crowded. You pick the busy one not because you know it's better, but because others do. Your brain thinks, they know something I don't. But here's the problem. What if they're all wrong? Then comes groupthink, where the desire to fit in outweighs the courage to speak up. You've seen it in offices, schools, families. One person suggests something and the rest nod. Not because they agree, but because they don't want to be the outsider. Truth becomes quiet. Agreement becomes a trap. Authority bias takes it even deeper. Put someone in a suit, give them a title, and suddenly their word becomes gospel. We obey. We nod. We believe. Not because it makes sense, but because they look like they know. But remember, position doesn't equal wisdom. Many wrong decisions were made by people in charge, followed by people too scared to question. And finally, the bandwagon effect, the ultimate everyone's doing it mindset. You see the trends, you hear the hype, and even if it doesn't align with your truth, you jump in because no one wants to be left behind. But here's the wake-up call. Following the crowd doesn't guarantee success. In fact, most people are wrong about most things because most people don't think deeply. They repeat, they mimic, they absorb. So ask yourself, are you living a life that's truly yours or one that's been shaped by everyone else? Because clarity begins when you step out of the herd and start walking your own path. Keep watching, because the next character, they don't just misread the crowd, they rewrite history to protect their ego. Chapter 5, The Biased Historian. Looking back always feels easier than looking ahead. The past feels clear, obvious, predictable. But here's the catch. It's not. You don't remember the past. You rewrite it. Meet the biased historian, the part of your mind that takes scattered events and turns them into a neat story. A story that makes sense, but often isn't true. Let's start with hindsight bias. You see an outcome and think, I knew it all along. But did you? Or are you just piecing together memories to fit the result? Hindsight creates the illusion of predictability. It makes the past feel like a straight line, when in truth, it was chaos. It blinds you to how uncertain things really were. Now enter survivorship bias. You look at the winners, the startups that exploded, the millionaires who made it, the success stories that flood social media, and you think, If they did it, I can too. But what about the ones who failed? The businesses that crash, the artists who never got noticed, they vanish from the story, and you're left with a lie. That success is common, and failure is rare. But reality? The failures outnumber the winners by miles. Then comes the outcome bias. You judge a decision based on how it ended, not how smart or logical it was at the time. If a risky gamble worked out, you say it was brilliant. If it failed, you call it foolish. But sometimes, the right decision leads to a bad outcome, and the wrong decision gets lucky. Don't confuse luck with wisdom. And finally, the narrative fallacy. Your brain craves a story, a beginning, middle, and end. So it creates connections where there are none, linking random events into a neat plot. But life isn't a movie. Sometimes things happen for no clear reason. And forcing a story can lead you to dangerous, false conclusions. The biased historian convinces you that you've learned from the past. But in reality, you've often just learned to justify it. True wisdom doesn't come from rewriting history. It comes from questioning it, asking what really happened, and what am I telling myself to feel better? Because until you challenge the story, you're still stuck in the past. Now stay with me, because next we meet a thinker who doesn't reflect or rewrite. They simply refuse to think deeply at all. Chapter 6. The Lazy Thinker. Thinking is hard. Let's admit it. Deep thinking takes time, energy, patience. And in a world that moves fast and demands instant answers, your brain takes shortcuts. Meet the lazy thinker. Not because you're unintelligent, but because your mind is wired to save energy. So it cuts corners, it jumps to conclusions, and it convinces you that you've thought it through when you haven't. It begins with the availability heuristic. If something comes to your mind easily, you believe it must be true, common, or likely. You hear about a plane crash, and suddenly flying feels dangerous, even though statistically it's far safer than driving. Why? Because your brain remembers vivid emotional stories, not cold, boring numbers. Then comes anchoring. You hear a number, any number, and your brain latches onto it. A product was $10,000, now it's on sale for $6,000. So you think you're saving $4,000. But was it ever worth $10,000 in the first place? You anchored on a fake price, and that anchor pulled your judgment down with it. Substitution is even sneakier. You're asked a complex question. Is this politician trustworthy? But instead of analyzing facts, your brain quickly substitutes it with, do I like how they talk? Or do they seem confident? You answer a different question without even realizing it, and feel completely sure you got it right. And finally, framing. How a question is asked changes the answer you give. 90% survival rate sounds reassuring, but 10% chance of death? Terrifying. Same statistic, different emotional impact. Your brain doesn't just absorb facts, it absorbs context. And that context shapes your decisions without you even noticing. The lazy thinker isn't evil. It's not broken. It's just overwhelmed. And in a world filled with information, noise, and pressure, it chooses the path of least resistance. But if you want to think clearly, you have to slow down. Pause. Ask better questions. Don't just grab the first answer your mind throws at you, because clarity doesn't come from speed. It comes from effort. Next up, we meet the part of you that doesn't just take shortcuts, it flat out denies reality. Chapter 7. The Denial Addict. Sometimes the truth is loud. It's right in front of us, undeniable, clear, even painful. And yet, we pretend not to see it. Meet the denial addict, the part of your mind that protects your ego, not your growth. It tells you comforting lies instead of hard truths. And slowly, it builds a bubble around you. A bubble where nothing ever changes, because facing reality is too uncomfortable. It starts with cognitive dissonance. That inner tension when your actions don't match your beliefs. You know smoking is bad, but you do it anyway. You believe in saving money, but you overspend. So instead of changing your behavior, you change your story. I only smoke when I'm stressed. I deserve this after a hard week. That's your brain scrambling to make two conflicting things feel okay. Then comes confirmation bias. You only search for what agrees with you. Read the news that confirms your opinion. Follow people who echo your beliefs. Ignore facts that challenge your views. You're not thinking, you're just reinforcing what you already believe. And the scariest part? You don't even know it's happening. Next, we bury our heads with the ostrich effect. When the news is bad, the report is negative, or the results are uncomfortable, we simply ignore them. Like the ostrich hiding its head in the sand, we believe, if I don't look at it, maybe it'll go away. But ignorance doesn't protect you, it just delays the damage. And finally, the status quo bias. You stay where it's familiar, even if it's not right. You resist change, because doing nothing feels easier than doing something new. But comfort is not the same as happiness, and standing still can be just as dangerous as moving in the wrong direction. The denial addict is sneaky. It's not loud or angry, it's quiet, calm, and convincing. It tells you, you're fine, even when you're not. But if you want real clarity, you must be willing to face what's uncomfortable, to break your bubble, to look truth in the eye, and grow because of it. Next up, we travel through time with a character who constantly lives in the extremes of now or never. Chapter 8, The Time Traveler. Time. We all have it, we all waste it. We chase the future, regret the past, and rarely live in the present. But the real problem? We don't understand time, at least not how our brain twists it. Welcome to the world of the time traveler, the version of you that constantly jumps between, I'll do it later and I need it now. It's not about clocks or calendars, it's about how we feel time. Let's begin with hyperbolic discounting. A fancy name for a simple flaw. We choose small rewards now over bigger rewards later. Why save money for next year when you can buy that new phone today? Why exercise when you could just rest for today? The future feels distant, so we trade long-term gain for short-term pleasure, over and over again. And then we wonder why we feel stuck. Then there's the planning fallacy. You think, I'll finish this in a few hours. But days pass, deadlines slip. Stress builds. You underestimated the time, effort, and distractions. Again, because your brain is overly optimistic about your future self. You forget your past delays and assume this time will be different. Spoiler, it usually isn't. Procrastination is the classic symptom. You know what needs to be done, but you delay. You scroll. You say, I'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow is just today in disguise, and every later becomes a weight you carry until it crushes your peace. Then comes the recency effect. Whatever just happened feels more important than everything that came before. You forget the full story and focus only on the latest moment. That one good day makes you ignore a bad week. That one failure makes you forget a year of progress. You judge time not by truth, but by memory. The time traveler isn't logical. It's emotional. It makes you chase pleasure, avoid effort, and misread your own life. But here's the truth. The future isn't some distant land. It's built, one clear, conscious decision at a time. Want to master your time? Start by understanding how your mind distorts it. Then take control, not someday, but now. Next, we meet a character who doesn't just distort time or truth. They twist logic itself. Chapter 9, The Illogical Logician. You think you're being logical. You believe your choices are rational, backed by facts, shaped by reason. But deep beneath the surface, your brain is cheating. You don't even see it. Meet the illogical logician, the version of you that sounds smart, but thinks in illusions. You follow flawed patterns, break the rules of probability, and make decisions based on gut, not math. It starts with the conjunction fallacy. You hear a story about a woman, intelligent, outspoken, passionate about justice. Then someone asks, is she more likely to be a bank teller, or a bank teller who's also an activist? Most people choose the second. Why? Because it sounds more accurate. But logically, that's impossible. A single condition is always more probable than two combined. But your brain prefers stories over statistics, so it chooses what feels true, not what is true. Now let's talk about base rate neglect. Imagine a test for a rare disease that's 99% accurate. You test positive. You panic. But wait, how rare is the disease itself? If it affects only 1 in 10,000 people, your chances of actually having it are still very low. Yet most people ignore the base rate, the starting odds, and jump to conclusions. Because understanding probability isn't natural. It requires effort, patience, precision. Then comes the gambler's fallacy. You flip a coin 5 times, it lands on heads every time. Now you think it has to be tails next. But no, it doesn't. Each flip is independent, yet your brain looks for balance even where none exists. This fallacy fuels addiction, broken bets, and false hope. And finally, the clustering illusion. You see patterns in randomness, a lucky number, a streak of wins. You think something special is happening. But often, it's just chaos pretending to be order. Your brain craves meaning, so it creates it, even when none exists. The illogical logician isn't stupid, it's human. It's trying to make sense of a world filled with uncertainty. But if you want to think clearly, you have to stop trusting your instincts on logic. Step back. Do the math. Ask, does this feel right, or does it make sense? Because in the end, truth doesn't care about your gut. It cares about reality. And now, as we reach our final chapter, we meet a character who does something far more dangerous than miscalculate. They believe in illusions and mistake them for truth. Chapter 10. The Illusionist. Step into the spotlight. Here comes the grand performer, the illusionist, the master of deception, not of the stage, but of the mind. You've seen the trick before. Two events happen one after another. A man takes vitamin pills, then feels better. A company hires a new CEO and profits rise. You say, aha, the pill worked. The CEO saved the company. But did they? This is false causality, believing one thing caused another just because they happened in sequence. Correlation is not causation, but the illusionist wants you to believe it is. Because stories with cause and effect, they're easier to remember. They make the chaos of life seem manageable. Then comes the illusion of validity. The more information you have, the more confident you feel. You meet someone, read their resume, hear them speak, and you know they'll be successful. Your confidence soars. But confidence is not accuracy. You may be just confidently wrong. The illusionist plays another trick, the primacy effect. The first thing you hear, the first impression you get, it sticks. It anchors your judgment. If the first review of a movie says masterpiece, you'll view it differently than if you first read disaster. Your brain clings to the starting point, even when better information comes later. And then, the most seductive illusion of all, the just world hypothesis. The belief that the world is fair, that people get what they deserve. Good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to the bad. But the truth, life isn't fair. Bad things happen to good people all the time. Yet we want to believe in justice because it comforts us. It gives us a sense of control. The illusionist thrives in this comfort zone, feeding you stories that feel right, even when they're built on lies. And once you believe, you stop questioning. That's the real danger. This chapter is a warning. Your reality is not always what it seems. You must learn to doubt the obvious, to challenge what everyone knows, to resist the sweet illusions that trap billions every day. Because the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. Now that you've uncovered the 10 hidden characters shaping your thinking, which one controls you the most? The first step to clarity is awareness. So don't just watch, reflect, apply, and grow wiser every day. If this video opened your mind, like, share, and subscribe for more powerful book summaries and life-changing insights. Let's think clearly, together.